this connection building, right, this process that this graph goes, and then as we have more compute, more things coming on, I think we need to be able to, that's what I was trying to do. Like in my head already it was becoming difficult. Where do we go from what? Like writing the code is one thing, right? And this is where I think the whole idea of AI and the more philosophical ideas behind it, I think inspire me a lot. The more structural, mathematical, philosophical, neurobiological ideas, because the code is only one part of the story. What emerges out of it when you shove it with a lot of data is a totally different thing. And that is the beast, the real beast, which is why the transformer model of thinking, or these neural network model of thinking, they depend a lot on the volume of data. So some of these things will never happen if the data was not that large. The patterns emerge only because heuristics that are being applied can only emerge, let's say, intuitiveness at a large scale, not at a small scale, right? So of course our graphs are nowhere of that scale of a large language model or even a small language model, but at some point the hope is that they will become, and we'll start seeing some of these patterns emerge. We'll add more algorithms at the level of the graph, that some of these heuristics will start emerging, and decisions will be made, etc., depending on them. But to be not able to visualize means that we developers ourselves do not know what is the flow, and at some point this flow will be too much even for this visualizer to do, but this is a step in the right direction to allow us, okay, some visualization instead of none, and some more like visualization the way it is supposed to be, which is follow the flow of the building process of the graph, right? So it's a very different approach to what we are trying to visualize. The reason why Pixlie does not talk as much in English as much as it talks in code with AI is that reason. That Gmail, why it sucks so much when it is still a Google product and Gemini is a Google product in the use of AI, is because they are just putting some prompt on top of Gmail and expect it to work. That's not how it works. It works great for conversations, philosophical subjects. It's
Hmm.
not how you build software, because software needs some kind of bringing value, precision back to your user interface, to your data, to somewhere. And that's just not the nature of prompts is about fluid text. So you need to
Hmm. Hmm.
capture the back and forth in something that is more concrete, more concise, more compact, more grammared, so a coding language, right? Which is why we lean so much to talk back and forth with coding languages, not in human languages.
Yeah, yeah. Like linguistic languages are fuzzy in that term, in those terms, and we are looking for more well-defined, objectively, uh, you know, uh, derivable, like specific languages.
Yeah, basically I think what we have created internally, and this is something that I believe is a big deal, is that we have created mini versions of all these big ideas of how to interact with AI. If you think of agentic, we have created our own version of agentic. If you think of MCP, we have internally created our own version of MCP. If you think of typed communication, yes, the inspiration came from type chat, and we basically adhere to that idea of type chat, right? So this is why I feel like, which is by the way why in the previous day's discussion or any day's discussion, right, I always try to bring back this point that we do not need to look at other products, because we are always somehow ahead of the curve. We have always been, and we still are. At every point that there's something nice coming on, look at Pixlie's code and you'll be like, oh, okay, there's a reference to this somewhere already, it's just called something else.
Hmm.
Pixlie already does. Pixlie is a tighter way to communicate with AI, which is everybody is trying in their own ways. Like, yeah, Pixlie has been doing this from day zero. That's the whole point. I think objectives are basically agents, or rather, objectives are the goals. You could say here the instruction given to the agent. Basically, that's the objective, right? What is it trying to achieve? So I think right now our objective is tightly coupled to the crawler. That's the first objective we start off with, and I'd say then that's the agent for crawling, right? That right now Pixel is just that. Like, it's It's just that one agent. Once we do classification, classification will have its own prompt, because that prompt will be very different. And that's where, Hillary, I wanted to mention, by the way, system prompt, I'm not sure we will ever change. So I don't think users will have access to system prompt, but they will have access to the user side of the prompt. So the prompt has the system part, which is generated automatically, which is, let's say, our codified interface, right? But there's also the human aspect of that prompt, which, to be honest with you, I feel like that's the objective in itself, because we just plug in the objective inside the total prompt, right? The total prompt has a lot of the codified stuff, and then inside it, like, here is the instruction that the user wants you to follow, right? Something like that. That part, that objective instruction, whatever you call it, I'd say that that is changeable. Would the system prompt be changeable? I'm not sure, because when we say system prompts are changeable, we generally mean that they are human language prompts. In our case, our prompts are not human language prompts, and that's a big deviation from other software out there, AI software, I mean, because we do not generate much of human language. We generate some, yeah, for sure, but I think more and more of that prompt is becoming just TypeScript. So unless you are an engineer, you probably not want to tweak it. And even if you tweaked it, the problem is the response coming back, we will now not be able to parse it, because we generated it so that we could parse it back as the AI would respond. So if that generation changed, if that prompt changed, now the output coming from the AI would also change, and then our system will break. So I think the system prompt will probably not be editable. What we will allow for sure is some kind of a mechanism for us to for you as a user to directly connect with us at the prompt level and saying, hey, this prompt looks odd, I don't think that was my intention, um, here is my suggestion. That suggestion should come to us, because I think changing the prompt will simply not work. It just breaks the system, because it's codified somewhere. That's the problem. We are not English language based, so that's, I think, the issue. What now, how do we manage these? Is simply that right now, like I said, Pixlie is just one agent. If you think of it that as the agentic flow, yeah, that's a good reference. I think this is one agent, which is just the crawler. But within that agent, what does it do? It goes to Brave Search API or not. By the way, if you're given starting URLs, it should not get to go to Brave Search API. But let's say all of that is one agent, right? So it starts the crawl process. Now pages come, scraping happens, content is there, and then nothing else happens in Pixlie. If you think about it, right? We show it, but nothing actually. There's no next level of AI. The next level, the next step rather, is classification. Now, if you think about it, classification will need its own types, the TypeScript interface, the codified interface, and it needs its own prompt. That is now an agent. So that whole thing, if you think about it, we don't call it an agent in the system. There's no word agent somewhere, but that is what agentic flow is about. So here we have agent, and each agent is holding on to its objective, right? So agents are similar in that they have an objective to accomplish. They talk to AI. So if a piece of code is not talking to AI directly, it is not an agent, which makes sense because that is what agentic workflows are. So agents in our system are any nodes which generate prompt and receive response from AI and process that. Agent.